We've been waiting for this. A build in 2024. How you can build one of the best gaming PCs. And I can't wait to test it out because we're going to use some great products here. But if you've never built a PC before, make sure you have some of these tools. Now, some of the information that I may share with you guys, if you already know, you can feel free to go down to the description box down below and skip it. And if you're interested in any of the products that I show in this build, make sure to check down in the description box as well. But first thing I gotta mention is you have to have something like this. I won't be using any power tools. I'm just gonna do everything by hand this time. You can use something like this, a iFixit tool set. It's literally one of my favorite sets. You have access to so many different tools and specialty tools that you can even use on smaller devices such as a Asus ROG Ally. Now, if you don't really want to spend the money to get this, because something like this is usually about $79.99 for this full toolkit, and again, it's 100% worth it if you do take apart a lot of electronic components. If you don't, that's fine. You can get something as this, and it's really cheap. You'll spend $5 or $10 for this. And it has a selection of different bits that you can use, different Phillips heads, and different smaller flathead bits that you can use on this tool, because you can easily just pull it out. You're gonna need to have some decent thermal paste here. You have to have thermal paste because you need to cool off your CPU. That's the only time you're gonna really need the paste, and usually I recommend to get coffee filters and lint-free microfiber rags, similar to what you would use on your glasses. So that way you can clean off any pre-applied thermal paste. I'm not too sure what type of thermal paste that Asus uses, but typically I just cleaned it off anyway because I don't really like using factory thermal paste on components. We got the AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D. This is one of the processors I was really excited for, especially for this year. And what exactly does it feature? It features 8 cores, 16 threads, and it also has 120 watts of TDP. It has 4.7 gigahertz, and it has a boost clock of up to 5.2 gigahertz. This processor is quite amazing. I'm going to explain a little bit more once we install it. Now, the motherboard that I will be using, and if you're interested to learn more about the motherboard, which I explain much more in depth in another video, I'll be using Asus's ROG X870E Crosshair Hero, which is an absolute monster. So if you are not only a gamer, but you also create content, this is an excellent choice for you. I will take advantage of Trident Z's Neo RGBs here. Now this is a little bit different. This is actually a 48 gigabyte kit. They also have a 96 gigabyte kit. This is at 6,400 mega transfers per second. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. Also, I have Asus's AIO here. Let me flip this around. I know it's all white, but I wanted something to stick out a little bit in the PC because kind of getting tired of all completely blacked out PC, but you'll see how it looks. I got the Asus ROG Ryujin 3, which is definitely a cooler that I've been wanting to really try here. I wasn't really planning to get Corsair fans, but for this build, I will, because I know a lot of you out there are curious about how these newer fans are, especially when it comes to their QX120. The reason why I'm not a big fan of Corsair's fans as of recent is because iCUE's software hasn't been that great. A much needed update, especially once they go to iCUE 6, because I have to say iCUE 5 is a disaster. Gigabyte SSD, their NVMe, the 2 terabyte one that I've used in my prior build. Reason why I'm using those two, because I want to be able to benchmark and see how it compares to my prior build of the 7950X3D. You're probably wondering what type of power supply I have. MSI's MPG A1000G. I've talked about this power supply. I'm excited to use it, and especially that it's built for ATX 3.1. And the other piece that I do have, it is Corsair's 6500 case. Since we already have all the prerequisites and plans already laid out, let's go ahead and build this PC because I know that's what everybody is waiting for. The exciting thing about building a new PC is seeing how well it performs, especially with modern games. We all know that AMD does an excellent job when it comes to their processors. We all know NVIDIA does an excellent job. And now we want to see if we can really get the best gaming PC out there. Let's go ahead and do this, and I'm going to open up this ROG Crosshair X870E Hero. Now, if you're interested in seeing more about this motherboard and all the details, make sure you click the card right above. As I go into a lot more details about this, you'll see why this is such a great motherboard to take a look at. And thanks to Asus for providing this, because without them, this couldn't have been done. Usually, I don't like to grab the case and put the motherboard in there first, because there's so much things you could first install when it comes to PC building. Typically, I like to aim for all the other accessories, such as the CPU, as it is already out the PC case. It'll make for a much easier install than trying to install it inside of a PC case. So let's put the CPU in this 9800 X3D. What makes this so different from the other 3D processors that they came out with, the 3D CCD actually sits on the bottom and the CCD sits on the top, which will help dissipate and make this processor a lot cooler. Not only that, you should see quite an improvement when it comes to gaming with the 9800 X3D. I feel like a kid at Christmas when I open things like this up, because it's just exciting. Now here it is. Now you probably heard a lot of things about installing the AMD processors, especially the 9800 X3D. There's been a lot of failures of installing this. Well, two specific ones on Reddit that claim that the socket burned out. Now when you install these, be really careful. There's actually two notches on here, which I will show you, that you can easily line up with the AM5 socket. When you are lined up with those notches, you shouldn't have a thing to worry about. So let's take a deeper look on this motherboard so you can check it out. When it comes to the AM5 processors, just make sure you follow these notches up here. There's going to be one up here on the top of it, right there, and then you're also going to see one right on the bottom. You'll know it's lined up because it's going to be completely flushed, and you do not want to sit the processor or seat it if you know this is flush, because it's not just going to push it flush. Instead, it's going to try to sandwich it into the socket, which is the last problem you want to run into. You're going to see right here on the corner, that is where the processor lines up, and you will also see it on the processor itself, right there on the top corner. If you're new to building a PC, you can always remove the cover here just to make sure that it is sitting correctly. That is always recommended. And always grab from up here on the top. You don't want to force it in there, or you don't want to push it with your finger. You're just going to line up the corner right here with the notch. And try not to pick it up at an angle or anything. Just line it up with these notches, just like so. It should fall into place. It's sitting flush, it's sitting at the corner, the notch is sitting where it should be, and this notch is sitting where it should be, and it's completely flat. If you know that it is, then you can go ahead and shut this cover and just latch it in. This will automatically pop off. Sometimes they'll automatically pop off, but they might not always, but there you go. The processor is installed. It's nothing really crazy, just be really mindful and careful when you are doing so. So next, I like to install the SSDs, or the NVMe, inside of the motherboard. This is one of my favorite ones because it can easily just detach just by simply just pressing this, and it pops open. Here, let me show you. Some of you may already know this one. They have ones that are faster, up to 12,000 megabytes per second, but this one is 10. But this is a great NVMe. I personally love it. I'm going to install it. It's really nice and easy on this motherboard. I'll show you exactly why. Right here, you can push this button, and there it is. You have access to thermal pads right under here. and they do have one here. So you do want to take this off, slide it into place, and it'll click in. That simple. I mean, how easy is that? And now, take this out, this thermal pad, because you don't want to leave the plastic on, because then it won't serve any purpose. Let's go ahead and reinstall this. There you go. That's one NVMe installed. Now, let's take these off. Typically, you're gonna need a Phillips head right here. This is gonna be 4 different ones. So we'll take that off. And if you wanna install any additional ones, they're right here. But since mine isn't gonna be all that crazy, it's just gonna be a standard NVMe 3. I kinda just wanna pull files off of it and just keep it as a backup drive. I'm probably gonna sit it somewhere on the bottom here. There you go. There we go. And now we just throw this back on. All lined up there, perfect. It makes for 4. And we're just about perfect. Next, we can install the RAM modules. What we're going to be using is Trident Z5's Neo RGBs, DDR5 RAM. The great thing about Asus's motherboard, the brackets are metal, and so is right here the little pin in the middle. And what that'll do is actually prevent any play with the DDR5, as they are typically known to wobble here. There we go. That's one. The best part is it's practically a brushless design on the gold fingers of your memory. They would have some sort of abrasiveness to it, to where the wear of the gold fingers would actually be scuffed, because it's not going to get as scuffed up, give you much more faster memory transfer speeds because of that. Is there anything else we can install on this motherboard? Actually, we can set up for the cooler, which is going to be the ROG Ryujin 368 RGB cooler. Here it is. Let's open it up and see what comes inside. You get that nice little ROG metallic card, similar to what you will get with your motherboard. What this is practically a warranty card. Now here, this is some premium stuff here. Now, I've used a lot of Corsair's equipment when it comes to CPU cooling, but this is quite impressive. Taking this out, just look at the piping, and just look how massive that cooler is. It is humongous. Now, they got the fans tucked in right here. So this is 3 RGB fans, and if you're not a fan of non-RGB, the best part is Asus actually provides Noctua fans. Noctua fans, if you don't know, they are the most quiet fans that you can get when it comes to PC gaming and in the PC industry. Now, here is all the interesting equipment that you will have to sort out. Reason being, you have to be able to differentiate what you're going to use for AM5 and for all its components. Now, more than likely, these are stands, but we'll worry about that soon. Who doesn't love more ROG stickers? I have a whole collection, just a drawer full. Let me know if you want any. This Radiator, I mean, this is just pure quality in here. Let me just try to squeeze this out. Just look at that. And the fins are just incredible. And I'll give you a nice little overlook of it. Isn't that just beautiful? It's going to even look better once it's actually in a PC. Most importantly, the actual manual and what you will need to connect. But since I'm here, I'm going to help you connect it to your motherboard. We have to remove the pre-installed heatsink mount. So we just got to remove this because we don't really need this anymore. Because this is just for a pre-mount and we need a bigger bit. Make sure you use proper bits because you don't want to use something too small because then you'll end up stripping the screw. You don't want to go way too cheap when it comes to screwdrivers or anything like that when it comes to motherboards, because you don't want to strip anything. And what that'll do is that'll leave the exposed threads open, so that way you can install the proper mount for the actual cooler. Probably never going to use these again, because definitely something you don't need, especially now. For those who are AIM-5 users and doing a 9800 X3D build, make sure you grab the ones that look something just like this. This is here for your AIM-5, and it'll even tell you what side your CPU is on. Now the other side is going to be something like this, so you just have to face it towards the CPU. That's it. It's going to be that simple. Set this towards the CPU here, just like that. And you want to leave the notches up, because they're going to actually be for your cooler here. So just like that. When it's getting ready to install, it should look something like this. You're going to use the much shorter side ones. Definitely don't use the long threaded ones that Asus gives you, because they're going to be for the fans here. You're just going to throw them in here and install. Now, if it starts to feel weird, or it starts to feel like it's not threading on right, don't force it in. It should be pretty smooth. It should just be hand tight, and don't go crazy over torquing it, because then you can crack the threading, and I don't think you want to get involved with rethreading and doing all that stuff. That's not really going to be very fun to do. Luckily, there's no backplate when it comes to Asus's cooler, so it's going to make it way easier. So we got the motherboard piece together. Mostly we have the CPU cooler pre-installed, sort of. We also got the RAM installed, we got the CPU installed, we also got the NVMe installed. Now, most importantly, we need to put it inside of a case, because what good is a motherboard and a PC without an actual case? Let me introduce to you the Corsair 6500 case. Good to have a knife, but not exactly the most necessary product needed. Well, here's the case, and come and take a closer look at it. The thing I really like about Corsair cases, they always have these filters in them. And they're removable, easy to dust off when you're cleaning. It's a beautiful looking case. It actually has these hinges where it looks like it just kind of swings open like a door. It's a very wide open case here. You can fit plenty of fans here, and it's even vented on the side. For some reason, the plastic already fell off in the inside, but I could care less about it, as long as if the case doesn't look too scratched up. Now what I'm really excited is you can easily open up this case to work on it by putting your finger down here, and it opens up just like a door. So you don't even need to unscrew anything. When we do install this motherboard, I'll probably install the radiator right here on the top to exhaust the fan, to exhaust the air out, and I will install the intake fans right there. Honestly, the best thing to do is take off all the panels. It'll make your job way easier. So let's just do that. You see here, the actual dust filters. And here's the little release leveler. You just squeeze it just like that. And that's what we are looking for, the grand prize. The screws and everything for the motherboard would be right here. It comes in as a pretty nice kit. This is nice to keep, because for all your random screws that you will have, you can actually have them nice and sorted. You can sit your power supply back here, which is a very nice design. You got the nice little pockets there where you can actually slide your wires in, which you will see soon. Here's where you actually have to plug in everything to your motherboard. First things first, I would usually suggest to install the motherboard. We'll pop this off. So when you look at cases, most importantly, you want to make sure that everything's set in the right place. You'll have the different legends, and depending on the type of motherboard that you have, for example, that the Asus X870E is a ATX board, so you want to make sure that they're lined up with the A side, which this is. Once it is and you're confirmed, you can just drop the motherboard in. Of course, be extremely careful, and remember that before we completely install it in, make sure to take off the IO sticker in the back, because that's kind of a pain and you don't want to leave that on here. Make sure it's always satisfying. The perfect area to install it. Make sure you insert the correct screws here. It should look something similar to this here. So what I always recommend is go backwards first a little bit, just to make sure that is lined up, and then start to tighten. You don't have to go crazy tight, because again, this is stationary and this isn't going in your car. So you don't have to worry about over torquing, because then you'll just cause further damage than you would want. Make sure to get the proper fitted Phillips head when you install these, because it always sucks when you drop these screws, especially in a deep case like this. Now there should be a total of 9 screws when you install this, and because I'm installing a GPU, there is a bracket that I do have to actually install. Because I am installing a RTX 4090 that I actually already have, I'm just going to be using the same mounts to install it. So depending on your graphics card, make sure that if it has a plate similar to this, install it now, because it'll be a lot easier and save you a lot of trouble later. But I'm going to install the Gigabyte RTX overclock RTX 4090 in for now, just until the RTX 5090 is out. Now you're probably wondering why I have washers on these ones, to prevent any type of grounding out from the support when it comes to this graphics card. Again, you don't have to install it super tight, because you want to be able to make sure that the graphics card can also come out pretty easy. So we got that in. All right, good. It's gonna sit just like this on top of it. On the other side of here is actually a screw where you can go back and forth to tighten up this graphics card. This will actually save us a lot of trouble in the future. The only thing is, I won't install the graphics card for the reason it's going to be too heavy, and it's going to make it much more difficult to install. Now these screws that they do give you are plastic. Careful if you're using that same type of graphics card that I'm using. I don't suggest tightening them all the way until you already have them set, and then you can tighten them. Make sure you stay tuned on this channel. I will definitely do a giveaway that I'm excited to give out. I'm thinking of something that is more international, because I want to be able to give something to all the viewers across the world. Wouldn't be possible without the fan band. Now we have the motherboard installed. Next, what we can do is we can actually put the cooler in. Since we're going to install the cooler here, make sure to take the plastic off of the radiator. Make sure you take this off too, because otherwise you're not going to get any airflow going. Now you want to try to prevent any damage on it. You might see a couple bent fins. It isn't going to be perfect, but do not use a flathead. You'll bend the fins for the radiator. Without the plastic installed, it should look something like this. Now if it is damaged, I always recommend switching them out, because then you won't get the proper airflow that you need. All you have to do is line up these holes up here on the top, if you're doing it the same way I'm doing it, which this is going to be the top of the case. Because it is, I'm just gonna hook up the radiator first, so that way it doesn't flop around in the case. That's the last thing I want. Be really careful when you install these. You don't want to damage the thread, so just make sure to have it lined up properly. If it feels too hard, then it's probably not lined up correctly. I don't tighten it all the way just to give it enough play. Reason why you don't want to tighten it all the way is because you want to give it enough play in order to install the fans later down the line. So usually I don't like to use the pre-applied thermal paste that they give you, and I'm going to replace it with my personal favorite, which is Artic Silver 5. Now, I know everybody has their own personal preferences when it comes to thermal paste. Make sure to have some disposable coffee filters, especially the cotton ones are great, and use alcohol. And you don't have to waste any lint-free microfiber rags over it. So just take off this plastic shielding. I'm pretty sure they use good pre-thermal paste, but then again, I'm just very picky about how I like it. And to finish it off, I usually get a microfiber rag to clean it up. Perfect. See how nice and shiny that looks? Make sure it's nice and clean. Just put it directly in the middle. Don't overthink it, just a P-dot size. A little bit sticky, but that's perfect. When you mount the Ryujin 3, you want to use the one with the line if you're going to be using the same processor as me. If you are using a Intel build, you have to use the full solid screw in order to put for Intel. Reason why? Because they both will mount on differently. So make sure if you're installing AMD, install the one with the line. The heat pipes face down, so just be careful when you do install it. Just want to make sure to install all the screws in. Perfect. So just put the cover back on it. Just like that. This here will be for your fan connection for your CPU. So we're gonna make sure to plug that in. So before we get further into the PC build, I'd like to introduce to you the MAG MSI A1000 PCIe 5.1 ATX 3.1. What the heck does that mean? It's the newest power supply that can support the newest of the graphics cards because it does have the 12 volt high power port 6x6. The reason why I prefer to open this up first is because then you can kind of harness the wires around it a lot easier while everything is out. Now I'm really excited to use this. MSI also does make some great products here. We will find out how well their power supplies really are. I do have a Thermaltake 1650 watt one where it has 12 volt high power ports, but it is just a basic ATX 3. Now, as all power supplies, it comes with this nice little pouch where it has all your wires, everything that you need. The main one, I really gotta point out to you, right here. And you see how it really stands out? You know this is going to be for your graphics cards for when it comes to the 40 series and the 50 series. The difference between this is that it's supposed to be a lot more easier to hook this up compared to the traditional way of hooking up the 12 volt high power port. But as you know, that it has issues if you don't seat the harness incorrectly. It causes these plastic end pieces to melt the harnesses. Put a little bit more faith in these. And again, there it is. Exactly what I'm talking about here. Make sure to fully seat it because you'll know if it's not fully seated because you're gonna see some of the yellow stick out. So that's a really good idea MSI had. But the main ones I wanna pull out first, going to be the CPU one first. Make sure to only use the adapter that MSI does provide you when you do install the power supply. You don't want to use a different one. Most important one that we need, which is the actual power supply. Take a look at the back of that just like a nice little sandwich. And really excited to see how this power supply does perform. It should come with the power supply screws. There you go. If you don't see any in your case, don't worry. MSI will provide you the proper screws to install this. Remember that wire right here, the USB? This comes from the actual pump. So we're gonna install this on the motherboard. I like to be as discreet and hidden as possible. Now the USB 2.0 looks like it's gonna be on the bottom here. So I'll make sure to route it that direction. I'll put the CPU plugins right away for this, which should look something like this. We know these CPU wires are perfect where they are. The USB wire for the pump, I'm just gonna slide it right here. You just wanna make sure nothing is sitting up against this guide. If it is, then it's gonna prevent you from the solid state drive if you want it. We got it snaked through enough, perfect. Just make sure it matches up. We'll start loosening this stuff up here. One USB 3.0 is hidden pretty much in the front, so I'm going to sneak it right around there, and then there's going to be one on the bottom of the motherboard too. Straighten it out because it's all going to matter once you start organizing it. So we see we got USB 3.0, USB-C, and we also have the front panel. We're going to hook up the USB 3.0, and all you have to do is match it up to that notch. Feed it back so that way you can easily hide your cables a little bit better here. Same thing with this, just like here, we got the notch. Front panel, it's gonna be a lot more obvious. You see how it has that missing pin? I'm just gonna line up the front panel connector. Hopefully you can see that. The USB-C here. Be nice to have a case where I can utilize this USB-C. We got the audio port here. You're just gonna match it up. Perfect. Next, we're gonna install these ATX cables. Of course, they got nicer ones. These are kind of stiff. Lastly, you need the PCI Express cable back here for the power delivery if you want to install it. We just installed just about every wire we needed. We got the ATX, we got CPU, we got all the case wires hooked up. Can't forget about the graphics card. I know it's not in yet. Now you can either use this, which I personally prefer, or you can go with their newer wire, which uses 2 PCI Express ports instead. Of course, it's much safer, but no matter what, you still have to plug this in somewhere. We'll leave that hanging and we're gonna turn this around. Looks crazy back here, but don't worry, we're gonna sort this out. So for now, I use the temporary stuff until all the wires are fully installed. And once they are, then we will really put the wire ties in. But you just want to get an idea of how you're gonna have it installed. That's perfect for now, just until we get the fans all hooked up to this PC. And just make sure it's at the correct direction, otherwise you're gonna ask for trouble when you do install these. For this style, I'm gonna have it as exhaust. And the best part about these fans I really like that Asus does provide is that they're magnetic. You don't have to worry about as many fan connections. This is where you're gonna use the longer screws to install these because they have to go through the fan and to the radiator. Now when you loosen it up, you get a little bit more flexibility, so you don't have to tighten up the radiator all the way. It'll make it a little bit easier for yourself, so you can lift it to where you need it. You'll know it's the right direction because it's just going to automatically stick just like how it is now. Now we should be pretty much at the home stretch here. Since we got the fans installed now you can completely tighten up your radiator, and you have your CPU cooler finally fully installed. Now to connect your fans, Asus couldn't have made it any more easier because all you have to do is connect this. Really easy to hook up. It's like a magnetic clip. At the other end is your typical CPU and your ARGB that you would plug into your motherboard. There you go. Now you just want to hook up the ARGB, which will look something like this. Plug in right here, this white one. So just line that up correctly. And this one here is going to be the CPU fan. This looks like a standard fan connector. Goes right there to the top, to the second one here, because this is going to be optional, and that one's the actual CPU fan. Now we have them. Now we have the AIO fully installed. We'll worry about cleaning up this wire just a little bit later, because we still got more fans to install. So the next real step we have to install is these QX120 fans. Now, typically I don't want to really go for Corsair's products because of their recent issues with iCUE 5. You gotta admit, they make some excellent hardware when it comes to their fans. Definitely reliable and of high quality. So we're gonna open this up here. Now, because I did get 2 sets of these, you don't have to worry about using up everything. You don't have to use up 2 lighting nodes if you don't have to. Now, it's gonna look something like this. Definitely a different feel. Thicker, much thicker plastic than they used to be. And again, these are all magnetic. This is the best part when it comes to more modern fans. Less wires, less headaches. Here goes the iCUE lighting system. They all should just link into this. This is how the new style looks. Much more smaller. These are the actual connectors. Right here for your fans. Don't be nervous. It is not going to be hard at all. Now they do have like little covers. You got the fan screws that you gotta have. USB to USB 2.0, which you will need for iCUE to recognize your products. We're gonna hook up the fans first here. In order to do so, it's all already pretty much connected for the most part. Check for the fan direction because we want this to bring in air into the case. And this was probably the hardest part of installing these fans, believe it or not, because how much of a pain this actually was. On the bottom here is going to be connecting to either other fans, or you can use it to connect straight to the lighting node or the commander or whatever they call it now. Same thing up on the top here. So we just got to make sure to take off this bottom dust filter so we can screw in the fans. You're wondering why everyone's leaving you, Corsair. What is this? Honestly, these plastic screws that you put in there, you gotta put a lot of pressure to self-tap these fans, and it makes it a hell of a lot harder, especially when they're plastic screws. Again, if you have metal screws, I highly recommend using those instead, but I get why they use plastic to prevent more noisy vibration. Let's go ahead and then start connecting these fans here. You should have a connection just like this, and you're going to connect it to your other fans if you have other Corsair fans. If not, you're going to hook it up directly to the lighting hub. All we have to do is hook up the actual hub for the assembly. Now you're going to need something like this, of course, to hook up to the fan in the first place. Now all we got to do is hook it up into here. This right here will get power from the actual power supply through PCI Express. Okay, We'll take the plastic off after. Well, let's put this sticker here. I had to move it down here because it was a little bit too high for the USB. So hopefully that's a good place for it. We'll find out soon once we start connecting cables. I don't like how close it is up here, but I want to try to keep this board as neat as possible. We got this USB, what we need. Make sure it plugs in to the non-pin. And we're just about almost all hooked up completely. Hopefully everyone can see inside okay. I know it's kind of a dark area, especially where the power supply is, but it's going to be fairly simple. You're just going to match up all the wires where it's going to be labeled, such as the 12-volt high power port or the ATX. I gotta say the only problem is for the lighting core here, right here, it's gonna be harder to service, but I don't really mind it because I don't plan to access it too often. So just keep that in mind if you do put it in the same location that I have it. Here goes the yellow part that I'm talking about. It should sit all the way in, completely flush. See, that's what it should look like when it's in. Let me organize this a bit. Now it's all wrapped up just like how I like it. We're going to tighten up this power supply. Now let's install the GPU. All we really have to do is put the GPU in. If you're not familiar of which GPU I will be using, it will be this one here, the RTX 4090, right there. It's a big monster. We're gonna throw that in there. We already got the bracket on here. Make sure to remove the back brackets so that way you can have the back of the GPU exposed where the display port and the HDMI port will be. You have to make sure these are out, otherwise you're gonna have a big problem trying to install a GPU. Alright, we are in, boys. Don't forget the front brace screw, and also make sure to screw in the bracket as well. This cable right here, and you're gonna know it's fully seated because you won't see any of the yellow anymore. Push it, don't worry, it's gonna be normal. You should feel a little bit of resistance as you're pushing. It may take a lot of pressure to do it, but it should look just like this. You won't see anything sticking out. We're just about to start the PC. We finally got through building this 9800X 3D build with a RTX 4090. Now the question is, will it start? Beautiful. We got lights. We see everything turning on as it should. I haven't turned the power button on yet. These are just the standard lights for the motherboard. The funny thing is I do have a NVMe that I've used before. I'm curious if I'll start up Windows with it anyway. If it doesn't, no big deal. I'll just install Windows in it again anyway. But let's see if it gets to the BIOS. You can hear the water pump kick it on and take a look at those beautiful lights.
Normally you won't get this message. You'll get this if you have a pre-installed Windows SSD. So I just click yes. That way it doesn't ask or prompt the same question again. We're successfully in the BIOS, but I'm gonna go to AI Overclock Tuner and just go to Expo 1. I'm also gonna go over to Core Performance Boost, enable that, and I will go to Precision Boost Overdrive. I will also have that enabled. And I'm going to save the changes and reset. Okay. Looks like it's booting up successfully so far. Let's just hope that Windows will boot up. Just to let you know, this is non-edited footage. This is all going to be original start time from the BIOS to Windows. And it looks like we are good. So hopefully you enjoyed this PC build as much as I did. If you're interested in any of the PC hardware that I showed in this video, make sure you go down in the description box. If you enjoyed this video, to give it a thumbs up. And if you know anybody else who wants to build a PC in 2024, make sure you share this video with them. If you're not part of the big wonderful fan band, make sure you go down and hit the subscribe button for more. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, especially that there will be a giveaway soon. Also, for all the newest updates, make sure you follow my X channel right here, as it is the same as my TikTok and IG as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Chris Mizo, signing out.